Hey everyone, I'm Nemo.
I'm Kenzie.
This video we're talking about ghosting, the early 2000s internet phenomena. Actually, it's kind of transcended internet, wouldn't you say now? Man, now I'm really pondering, this probably actually happened a lot before internet. The term
Can you
ghosting is
imagine
probably new.
writing a letter to a bitch in the 1800s and her just
Never getting a pigeon back?
Never getting a pigeon back. Or getting a smoke signal and never seeing the puffs back.
Man.
That's depressing.
Alright, we'll have to do another segment on like ancient ghosting. I'm gonna have to go research this. But no, so man, a lot of people writing in with issues about ghosting, and guys and girls both. So to kind of break it down, for anyone that isn't super familiar or have a lot of experience with this term, this phrase, or anyone who just lives under a rock, we're talking about the idea of talking to someone, having rapport with them. It could be a friend, family member. It's most commonly used, wouldn't you say, in the dating circles and
like in flirting kind of circumstances. Definitely.
Yeah, where you've got a lot of rapport with someone, and then without warning, without explanation, totally out of the blue, you never hear from that person again.
Yep.
So, this is a really hard thing to deal with on both ends, because a lot of times people who are doing the ghosting, they're in a really tough spot, which leads them to ghost in the first place. Not always, but enough to remark about it. And I think that stress can kind of, what we were talking about earlier, with the fuckboy situation, like because of so many obvious detriments and obvious dangers we see in the dating scene today. A lot of people feel like they don't have any other option to get out of a weird scenario other than to just vanish.
Definitely.
What are some reasons you've seen?
Honestly, it goes back again to the fuckboy thing. A lot of fuckboys will just ghost for no reason. I personally, I don't mean to ghost, but sometimes
You do it because there's no other option.
Well, not only that, but sometimes I'm just so bogged down with whatever's going on in my real, not internet life, that I just,
it's just not a priority
to
get back to that person that you were only casually talking to in the first place.
And I mean, I do make an effort to go out and say, hey, I'm sorry, I did not mean to ghost you. That was not my intention. Here are my reasons.
Yeah.
But I mean, even then, it does suck.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, it can be really hard for the people getting ghosted because, you were really putting some effort into that. You're really putting your heart into that. And suddenly the person's gone. And you're just kind of left like, what the fuck? Like, could I at least get some critique? Like, what did I do?
Right.
And, and then you're just left in this downward spiral of self-critique and creating all these...
thinking of over every single detail.
Yeah.
What could have gone wrong.
Completely overanalyzing things and doubting yourself and doubting life and...
Everything.
Can be really, really hard.
Definitely.
So, before I get on, we've got a list of do's and don'ts here that we want to touch on. But before I do, I just kind of want to open it up to you. If you got anything anything you would really love people at home to know about ghosting.
Just honestly, for people who are ghosting, or unintentionally ghost or whatever, take into account what the other person might think. Put yourself into their shoes. And then even for the people being ghosted, put yourself into their shoes too. Think, maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe it has something to do with me. Just balance the options and definitely don't overthink. Just kind of pick up where you left off and keep going because, I mean, either they'll come back or they won't.
So we're getting out of that, if I'm hearing you right, empathy is a huge thing a lot of us need to be implementing.
Definitely.
In these case scenarios. Not taking it personally.
Yep.
Because especially in the case that it's someone you're just getting to know, you don't really know them.
Exactly.
Yet.
So you don't know their reason.
Have no idea
exactly.
the infinite number of factors that could be going on in their life that led, they just shit came up and it just wasn't a priority to get back to you. Not that there's anything wrong with you at all. That's why you don't need to be taking it personally. But like, they've got stuff going on. And so I would highly encourage people to jump to that conclusion before anything, if you're going to be someone that jumps to conclusions. But we'll actually come back to that in our list of do's and don'ts here. And so we had empathy, not taking it personally, and there was one more point I heard in there.
I forgot.
It'll come up again later.
Yeah.
So we got a list of do's and don'ts here. In the case scenario of ghosting, if you're someone who implements this or has historically implemented the act of ghosting on someone to solve your issues,
That's not cool, man.
it's really not.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
I kind of have no respect for that. And I'm speaking as someone who admittedly has done that before, and I've had to learn from this, and that's why I'm here wanting to share this with you. We got to stop this. And so our list of do's and don'ts we got here. Read my first do.
Be sensitive.
Be sensitive and don't critique. So what we're touching about, that you don't know is the biggest opportunity you have to be sensitive and to get to know the person better. If you're like, if that's gonna happen, if it's not, at the end, you need to ultimately be okay with like, hey, this might be the end, and not take it personally, and be prepared and equipped to move on with your life. But if you are wanting to push forward with this, being sensitive is rather than critical. Some case share a little bit about this guy who was pretty critical with you that you were sharing.
Yeah, definitely. What do you want?
So, or I can just kind of glaze over this.
Yeah, definitely.
We had a case where she was out with a guy, he ghosted her, and then when he finally did write back, he just made remark after remark, that were like, I don't know if he necessarily meant it as an attack. I didn't really get that
I think
vibe.
he was just trying to justify his actions
Yeah.
at that point.
So that's what I'm talking about, being critical. Like, don't justify why this happened. Don't make excuses for why this happened, because all that came across as to the subject here in Kenzie's position was it comes across as just digs and attacks on her character.
Right.
And digs and attacks on what she's got going on in her
that
life right
makes me
now.
want to talk to you even less.
Totally. That is like, you're just creating more separation with the person, and looking in the macro here, you have no idea who she's going to go on to be in her life, and where you're going to be in your career. So looking 20 years down the road, you pop into each other in some career scenario, and she remembers that, and she doesn't. You didn't leave a savory flavor in her mouth. And if this is someone, not necessarily in your case, but in anyone else's case that you might ghost out there and be all critical, they might remember that and hold that on you.
And the other thing is that even in show business, they say everyone you see on the way up is everyone you're going to see back on the way down. So just be
100%.
very, very conscious of that.
Definitely. So be sensitive. I kind of want to jump to the third one there. And being sensitive, and instead of critiquing, which kind of goes hand in hand with my second, we'll call this our second don't here, don't assume things.
Definitely.
It's so easy, because we're creatures who highly utilize our associative memory to make sense of things and scenarios that happen in our life. When we meet someone, when Kenzie and I first encountered, she immediately pegged me as a fuckboy. Just
Sure.
Because how I was coming across was not my intentions, and from where I thought I was coming from, I didn't think I was putting that out there, but that was the assumption made. And so how you can use this to your advantage is, before you make an assumption and come in immediately throwing that in a bucket, being sensitive, leading to our second don't here, ask questions. You can ask very clearly defined questions and really fish around for what you might be suspecting has happened, or even take a couple steps back from that and ask a more broader questions. Hey, what's going on?
Is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything I can do to alleviate this situation? Do I need to back off? Do I need to be there? It's really important. Communication is key, because someone doesn't know there's a problem, how are they supposed to begin solving it? You can't fix a problem you don't know exists.
Yeah.
And I mean that goes to that applies to ghosting. That applies to work, relationships, family issues, whatever situation. Communication is so important because it's so critical to be clear with your intentions, so people know exactly what's going on, so they can then adapt to that situation.
And you get to show the person that you're really there to help by asking them.
Exactly. And they teach this in retail work, is that ask the customer what they want, make them feel like you actually care.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's so important. They don't say that in retail. It doesn't just apply in retail and restaurants. It applies everywhere else. You got to
Yeah.
make sure that that person feels wanted and feels cared about and feels like you are actually listening.
Yeah. So in the case that you're coming at the person, to ask questions, and maybe they're the one who ghosted you, and maybe they do want to be with you, they are still interested, they just got stuff going on, that you're asking questions is going to show them, hey, this person's authentic.
This person genuinely wants.
That's going to raise you on their
Right.
priority list, because they're going to see, this isn't just some douchebag who's in this to get some. He's actually interested in me. He's actually curious. He's actually
Right.
coming to ask questions. He's not being overly assertive or aggressive here. He's not jumping to conclusions and assuming
Assuming, yeah.
things. It's showing genuine interest. So, we'll flip this back onto if you're someone who's having to resort to ghosting someone to deal with an issue. My third do here is give notice. Don't vanish. So, and I want to touch on why vanishing can actually be a very detrimental and dangerous thing in a second. So, but first I want to say giving notice is going to help everyone. It's going to help you develop and cultivate better communication skills, which are going to help in every scenario of your life, especially in business and whatever job scenario you're going to have. It's going to get you more comfortable and used to uncomfortable situations and give you some more better sea legs, so to speak, there. It's really going to help them also with their self-esteem, because if you really, even just on a human level, care about this person just as another human,
Yeah.
giving them notice is going to help volumes for their mental health and for their self-esteem, that you actually let me know, hey, it could be something as simple as, I'm not feeling this,
Absolutely.
I'm just not feeling it. You're fine, I don't have anything personally wrong, I'm just not feeling the
No.
chemistry.
Exactly. The vibe isn't there, and that's
Yeah.
totally okay.
And if they want to come back at that and try to argue with you, okay, you did your bit
You
in
did
giving the
everything
notice.
you could.
Do not succumb to the temptation of making an argument about this or needing to justify yourself. Now, if you feel at liberty, and you're totally comfortable with, explaining it even more, but you don't have to beyond that. Just giving a simple notice hey, I'm going to be gone, or hey, I'm moving on, hey, I'm seeing someone else now, or I'm just not feeling this, whatever, but just giving some kind of notice. Don't banish, because for several reasons. One, you could be subjecting this person who you're just getting to know and don't really know a whole lot about, could be subjecting them to some serious relapse in trauma, and help, you could be contributing to enforcing their traumatic perspective of things, thus sending them, creating it even more difficulty for this person to open up or be close with or have any hope in relationships beyond this. Now again, I know plenty of you are immediately going to jump to, oh, well, that's not my problem. This all comes back to a matter of if you're a good person or not.
Just a decent human being, at least.
Yeah, forget, okay, we're past, seeing them in a romantic light or anything like that, dating or otherwise. But if you have any respect for them as another human, which tails back to if you have any self-respect to
It's
be
just
a
the golden
decent
rule.
fucking
Golden rule,
person.
absolutely.
Yeah. You don't want to subject someone to that possibility.
You got to put yourself in their shoes and just think, how is this going to affect this person? Even if it wouldn't affect me this way, how could it possibly affect this person? And
Yeah.
just take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Putting, a lot of times people will just be so cold-hearted about things because they think, well, I know how I would be affected in that situation. I wouldn't care.
And I'm guilty of not doing that. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of practice, honestly, of just stepping back from a situation and thinking, where are they coming from and how are they going to perceive, where I'm coming from? Because personal perception is reality. Always, always, always.
And this is why communication is so key here.
Absolutely. It's because you don't know how someone is going to think about it, because it's not just words. It's not black and white. There's so much gray area in every situation.
Totally. So another layer of the vanishing, why it can be dangerous, is that, say they're not someone who's going to like spiral into depression or upset or whatever. They could get really angry. You don't know this person. They could get manic. They could come after you. They could start, they could have a bunch of like fake accounts. They could start stalking you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
scary.
Overly obsessive. They could start like trying to find you out in person and come make some really dramatic,
entrance,
real world confrontation with you.
Real life shit, yeah.
That could have totally been bypassed if you had just given some simple communication. I think that's all I've got to say on the vanishing.
Even
you want
then,
to add to that?
keep in mind that you don't owe them an explanation, but it's fucking courtesy to, just say, hey, I'm not feeling it. Just a notice, like you said, give notice.
Yeah, and if you're still hearing this and insisting that, like, you don't owe them that courtesy, do it for yourself. Do it for the case scenario that this might come back to bite your ass.
Hard.
And so, like, if you're a truly ultra selfish person, fine, do it for those reasons. Like, give notice because you're selfish and you don't want this to come fucking bite you. Okay. So, and this brings us to our fourth layer here of the do's and don'ts. Don't be petty, but do have standards. And so I want to, like, this is going to kind of transcend the topic here, and that, gosh, I'm getting tongue-tied. This is a big issue for me. This really is going to be pointing at your integrity and your character as a person. And this is going to be very telling of who you were going into this to begin with. If you were just going into a situation, for a quick fuck or whatever kind of benefit, like self-seeking benefit you saw out of this, that's being petty. And being petty, in a business perspective, has plenty of short-term gains to be had. Sure, you can be petty as hell and get that sugar daddy. You can be petty as hell and, get that good cooch, on a one-night stand. But having standards will go so far beyond in the macro by, helping you to avoid any of these dangerous scenarios that you might have ended up in otherwise, because being petty and going after sugar daddy could wind you up in a sex trade. I know that's a radical example, but I mean, like, work.
It has happened.
It happens.
Yeah.
So work with me here. Going after some girl for, a one-night stand, turns out you didn't know that someone you're actually good friends with is good friends with that person. And now you've just been outed because now your whole friend group just got word down the grapevine what a shitty petty thing you did, and now all these people that you held close to you previously totally think differently of you now.
Yeah.
And you just lost a bunch of friends because you were petty. Was it worth it? Maybe for that night, but in the long game, no. So having standards is going to be huge for taking you the distance, and it's going to really help you to navigate into things that are more worth your time, and it's going to plant you in situations where you're of much more benefit to those people. You're going to just click with people a lot more better when you have standards and you're really clear about what your standards are. It's just an overall amazing thing. You got anything to add to that?
Definitely, just like you said, be clear with your intentions, be clear with your standards. Standards are an important thing, especially
have standards.
Have
So many of you don't have any.
And the other thing is that be realistic with your standards, but don't set them too low. Because being realistic and setting them too high or setting them too low is a tricky situation. especially with relationships.
And I think that comes based on a lot of you get so hung up on opinions of others or opinions of the media or what you see,
But as long
anywhere
as
in
you know
society.
yourself,
Yeah, get to know you, and
Definitely.
base your standards off that. Like,
Yeah, and I've had to do that recently. I've had to really step back and, as far as like relationships and,
Mhm.
and boyfriends, just kind of sitting there and saying, what do I want? What do I deserve? What am I worth? What do I know I'm worth? What do I not know I'm worth? And, kind of exploring those options, but at the same time keeping it realistic, but keeping my standards high enough to where I'm not going to go for some dude that's going to beat the shit out of me every day and then say, I love you. Like shit like that. So, not only in relationships, but just, set the standards high enough to where you're not gonna be
friends,
definitely
associates, like
family,
whatever.
I cut my mom out of my life because I know I'm worth more than her abuse. I mean, it's just like any situation that involves another human being, you're gonna have to have standards because that's just how the world works.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Don't be afraid of being alone, because like if you are coming from a place in life where you've historically been petty and predicated your friendships and your romances off just short-term gain and short-term fulfillment, then yeah, there's gonna be a period of transition where while you're taking the time to develop and cultivate some standards for yourself, which I understand. It can be scary in that time where you're gonna feel isolated. It's possible that you'll feel isolated while you're developing those standards, but the investment will be worth it. The return on that investment will be huge because you'll have gotten to know yourself. You'll have gotten to know what's actually important to you. You'll have gotten clear on like where it is you're wanting to go with the 60, 70, 100 years you've got on this planet. I don't know, we've got all this technology. We might live to be over 100 now, but your time's finite and you want to invest it well. You want to use it to the best that you can.
Do what you can while you're on this shitty floating rock.
So really don't be petty about it. Have standards and make
back-
them based on you.
Definitely, and it goes back to having standards is getting to know yourself and then being able to communicate.
Yeah.
What you've learned about yourself and using that to your advantage to definitely, build relationships and build friendships or, whatever, build business partnerships. I don't know. Whatever situation you come across, communication is important. Standards are important. Being a decent fucking human being is so fucking important.
Yeah.
So important.
Awesome.
Definitely.
So, any last thoughts?
That's all I gotta
So
say.
to recap, ghosting, be sensitive, don't be critical, give notice, don't just vanish, ask questions, don't jump to conclusions or assume things, and have standards, don't be petty. I'm Nemo.
I'm Kenzie.
It's good seeing you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video if you did. Leave some comments with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and the bell as well, so you get notifications.